What is going on, guys? Smoke here. How's everyone doing? With the new edition of Resident Evil 3, Capcom has certainly proved that they're capable of turning out some high quality titles. And while knocking around online, I came across several articles surveying fans on the possibility of more Resident Evil remakes. While the survey doesn't actually offer any hints for future Resident Evil games, it is nice to see that they are taking fans into consideration. The survey, which is targeted at Asian markets, were given these questions. If a new remake title of Resident Evil series is released, would you like to purchase? And if a sequel of Resident Evil series is released, would you like to purchase? So I thought, why not make a video discussing the prospects of a remake for some of the past Resident Evils? Firstly, this is a list about existing games, so I'll not be addressing the second question, and as such, will not feature RE8 or any other speculative RE sequels. Also, this list is my opinion. Mine. One Senor Smokes. And I know some of you aren't going to agree with my views. And that's okay. Everyone's got their own preferences on the way they feel about certain games. Alright, let's get into it. Let's take a look back at the 3 games that inspired me to do this list in the first place. The original remake was released back in 2002 on the GameCube. And this is a perfect example of if you want to remake a game, this is how you do it. Directed by Shinji Mikami, the creator and director of the original Resident Evil, it retains the same graphical presentation with 3D models superimposed over pre-rendered, static backgrounds, but with vastly improved visuals and much sharper gameplay, with new mechanics like the use of defense items to avoid damage, or the 180-degree quick turn that was first implemented in the original Resident Evil 3. The remake also featured new puzzles, additional explorable areas, a revised script, and even included an entirely new subplot that never existed in the original game. In my opinion, the 2002 Resident Evil remake is nothing short of a masterpiece. Following the release of the 2002 remake, Capcom considered a similar remake of Resident Evil 2, but at the time, series creator Shinji Mikami did not want to divert development away from Resident Evil 4. Hideki Kamiya, director of the original Resident Evil 2, has said that he had been pushing Capcom to remake Resi 2 for years, and after the success of Resident Evil 7, Capcom finally released it in early 2019, to universal acclaim, and what a game it was! Gone were the original tank controls and fixed camera angles. Featuring an over-the-shoulder third-person shooter gameplay similar to Resident Evil 4, with slight changes to the subplot, additional areas, new puzzles, and obtainable items, while still remaining faithful to the original game. With the success of the RE2 remake, fans were clamoring for a remake of the third installment, and admittedly, it dropped shortly after in early 2020. While the game itself brought very little new to the franchise and sadly cut quite a bit of content from the original, it did look very good, and played smoothly enough. While incorporating a more action-oriented feel, it still retains some of that old Resi nostalgia, and in my mind, while it was certainly nowhere near as good as the previous 2 remakes, and rushed as it was, it's still a pretty decent game. And actually, on a side note, if you do want to know more about Resident Evil 3, the remake, and why I say it's nowhere near as good as the other 2, be sure to check out my full review on this channel. So where to go after RE3? Well, in my opinion, the obvious choice would be Code Veronica, since it is technically the next game in the main series. If you're talking about chronological order, and before you ask, yes, I do count Code Veronica as part of the main series. Released in 2000 on Sega's Dreamcast, and later ported to PS2 as Resident Evil Code Veronica X, it follows Claire Redfield and her brother Chris in their attempts to survive an outbreak of the virus at both a remote prison island and Umbrella's Antarctic research facility. The game retains the traditional tank controls and gameplay seen in the series' previous installments. However, it did remove the pre-rendered backgrounds and instead opted for real-time 3D environments and the use of dynamic camera movements. For the time, Code Veronica was a graphical oddity. You have to remember, it came out before PS2 existed, and was a testament to the Dreamcast's power. So compared to the last real Resi on PS1, and of course I'm talking about the original RE3, it was miles ahead. The atmosphere and lighting were top notch, and the story was solid, expanding much of the RE universe. Sure, There were a few annoying characters. Steve Burnside was a moron and Alfred was beyond mental. But overall, Code Veronica was an absolutely phenomenal game. So what about Resi 4, you may be asking? Launched in 2005 to universal acclaim on the GameCube, and since ported to PS2, PC, and Wii, and then later ported in HD to PS3, Xbox 360, and Switch. Assuming control of returning RE2 protagonist Leon S. Kennedy, sent on a mission to rescue the US president's daughter in a rural part of Europe. It completely veered away from the old Resi tank control system, and instead adopted an over-the-shoulder viewpoint and presented players with much bigger areas overall. The virus-driven zombies and mutations were replaced with villages infected by mind-controlling parasites. So, does Resi 4 deserve a remake? In my opinion, hell yes it does. The thing with Resi 4, I've got a long-running saying. Whenever someone asks me what I think of RE4, I always say RE4 is probably the best Resident Evil ever made. But to me, it's not a Resident Evil. It never quite sat right with me how they switched the virus for parasites, zombies for mind control villages. That being said, it doesn't stop RE4 from being one of the greatest games ever made. The only reason I say Code Veronica needs a true remake more is because RE4's already got the over-the-shoulder camera as seen in the current remakes, and has already got HD ports, where Code Veronica has been somewhat forgotten. Right, so what about the original Resident Evil remake? The one from 2002? Well, I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels the 2002 doesn't necessarily need a remake, since it technically is already a remake, but can you imagine running around the Spencer Mansion with an over-the-shoulder view and in today's graphics? The guardhouse with Plant 42, the Aqua Ring with the sharks. Plus, we've already seen how well they can do hunters in the Resident Evil 3 remake. Now that would be awesome. You know, every Resident Evil has its own unique atmosphere and charm, and in my opinion, Resident Evil 1 is hands down my favorite. There's always something to be said about the first installment of a series, so I would definitely be on board if Capcom decided to remake, or rather re-remake, the original. Resident Evil 0 was developed alongside the 2002 remake, and was released for the GameCube in 2002, then ported to Wii in 2008, and remastered in 2016, and has since been released for PS3, PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and Switch. Set as a prequel to the original Resident Evil, covering the ordeals in the Arklay Mountains by the STARS Bravo team. The story follows rookie officer Rebecca Chambers and convicted criminal Billy Cohen in the events leading up to the mansion incident. It played pretty much like the old Resis, but introduced the partner zapping system, where the player controls both characters, switching between them to solve puzzles and use their unique abilities. While for the time it looked great and had a thoroughly creepy mood, the story was a little flat, the characters were uninteresting, and that partner zapping system mechanic got old very quickly. Now, I'm sure there are some diehard Zero fans out there, and I apologize to you guys, but in my opinion, when it comes to Resi Zero, Capcom should let sleeping dogs lie. Good old Resident Evil Revelations. Released for the 3DS in 2012, and an HD version was ported over to the PS3, Xbox 360, Wii U, and PC the following year. Set between the events of Resi 4 and 5, the game follows Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield, as they set out to stop a bioterrorist organization from infecting the world's oceans with the T-Abyss virus. The game combined the over-the-shoulder viewpoint with a slow, methodic gameplay of the original Resi titles. Set for the most part on an ocean liner stranded out at sea, the game does a superb job of creating a sense of confinement, and while it was fantastic, especially for fans of the old Resis, it wasn't without its shortcomings. The lack of enemy variety for one thing, but the way the story jumped around in an episodic form was a little unnecessary. I remember when I played it for the first time, I hated it, but it kept calling me back, and slowly it grew on me. So should Capcom remake it? Why not? I mean, the upcoming RE8 originally started out as Revelations 3. So that alone proves that they haven't lost interest in the franchise just yet. Originally released in 2003 for the PS2, Outbreak follows the exploits of a group of survivors set during the events of RE2 and RE3. The gameplay utilized the tightened up tank controls that can be found in the 2002 remake and Zero, and was geared heavily towards online multiplayer. Thus, the story was practically non-existent. Outbreak was a fun little romp while it lasted, and that opening intro was insane. But essentially, it is lucky to even make this list. A follow-up installment entitled Resident Evil Outbreak File 2 was released the following year, also for PS2, but sadly it was more of the same. Once again, I'm sure there are some fans who will disagree with me, but personally, I hope that if Capcom does decide to remake this one, they do it after every other entry on this list. Okay, so that about covers all the potential Resident Evil remakes that Capcom could do. And sure, I know I haven't covered the on-rail shooters or multiplayer titles out there, but that's the list. But hold on now, what if we were to take a step back from Resident Evil? Now that Capcom is opening up the possibilities of remakes, why stop at the RE franchise? After all, Capcom has an absolute plethora of franchises under their belt to work with. Also, do note, the no sequel rule will not apply here, as some of these titles might actually work better as a sequel than an actual remake. Who didn't see this one coming? The net is already swarming with rumors about the possibility of a Dino Crisis remake. Developed originally for PS1 back in 1999, then ported to the Dreamcast and PC in 2000, and was re-released for the PlayStation Network in 2006. Dino Crisis was created by the same team behind the Resident Evil series, including director Shinji Mikami. The pre-rendered backgrounds of the old Resident Evils were replaced with 3D environments, but otherwise it played pretty much the way the old Resis did, with the inclusion of a new bleeding mechanic thrown in. The story follows Regina, a Specs Op agent sent in to investigate a secluded island research facility, only to find it overrun with dinosaurs. Sounds kinda corny, right? You would be wrong. While the game was essentially a Resi clone, the enemies were way tougher and way more intelligent than that of the usual zombies, and the atmosphere and lighting were top-notch, at least for the time. Overall, Dino Crisis was a solid old-school survival horror that spawned an excellent sequel in 2002, and then a not-so-excellent sequel in 2003. Still, it remains my obvious first choice, and apparently many others, for a Capcom remake outside of the Resident Evil franchise. Onimusha Warlords is an action-adventure game and the first entry of the Onimusha series. Released for PlayStation 2 in 2001, then updated for Xbox in 2002. The original was eventually ported to PC, although it had a very limited release, being only available in China and Russia. A remaster for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and Windows via Steam was released in January 2019. It did feature pre-rendered backgrounds, and the player assumes control of swordsman Summonusuke Akechi as he battles through hordes of demons. Set in the Sengoku period of feudal Japan, with a well-designed combat system and stunning visuals, for the time, of course, Onimusha easily makes the cut. And yeah, I know an HD remaster came out in 2019, but this is where I say a sequel might actually work better. With more recent games like Team Ninja's Nioh and From Software's Sekiro, the feudal Japan setting is still going strong. Okami was developed by Clover Studio and published by Capcom. It was released for PS2 in 2006 and ported over to Wii in 2008. An HD remaster was released for PS3 in 2012, PS4, Xbox One, and PC in 2017, as well as for Switch in 2018. The sequel, Okami Den, was released in 2010 for the DS. Players take control of the sun god Amaterasu, with the aim of restoring the balance of nature and banishing darkness from the land. The gameplay is a mashup of action-adventure and platforming with puzzle elements. One thing that sets Okami apart is the Celestial Brush, a mechanic where players can bring up a canvas and technically draw with the use of analog sticks or motion controllers onto the screen. This can be used for a variety of different things, from fighting enemies to solving puzzles. Another thing that makes Okami so unique is its visuals, which predominantly uses cel shading, but done in a sumi or Japanese ink wash painting style. It's a truly enlightening experience that you'll soon not find anything quite like it in any other game. This would be another time I say a sequel might actually work better than a remake. Who doesn't remember this little gem? Beautiful Joe is a side-scrolling beat-em-up developed and published by Capcom, and released in 2003 for the GameCube, and was later ported to PS2. It was directed by RE2's Hideki Kamiya, and produced by Atsushi Inaba, who worked on titles like the aforementioned Okami and God Hand. The game follows Joe, an average everyday avid movie fan, who after learning his girlfriend Sylvia has been kidnapped is thrust into movie land, and attains the power to transform into the tokusatsu-style persona Beautiful Joe. With this new power, Joe sets out to rescue her. The gameplay is that of a traditional 2D side-scrolling platformer, intermixed with 3D cel-shaded graphics. Although the story was kinda out there, actually, it was more of a parody if I remember right. But, with a fast, stylish combat system and interesting visuals, Beautiful Joe definitely needs some attention. Most likely in the form of a sequel. You guys want to talk about old school? AVP is a side-scrolling beat-em-up developed and released by Capcom in '94 exclusively for arcade. The players can take control of up to 3 out of 4 characters, 2 predators and 2 cyborgs, as they traverse through levels in a battle against a xenomorph infestation. Sounds pretty simple, right? Damn straight it was, and it was great. I played this game into the ground when I was a kid. And so did many of my friends. So what's the likelihood of seeing a remake with this one? Probably not that great, but one can hope. While we're on the topic of old school beat-em-ups, anyone remember Final Fight? A little gem of a game that just oozed 80s action. Produced by Capcom and originally released as an arcade game in 1989. It spawned a slew of sequels, with its final installment being released in 2006 on PS2 and Xbox. In 2018, Final Fight was re-released in a Capcom beat-em-up bundle for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. With the upcoming Streets of Rage 4, and damn, does that look like a good game or what? I think side-scroller beat-em-ups are in a pretty good position these days to be considered for a remake. I know we could go on for days talking about all the classic titles Capcom has to work with, so let's stop it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Actually, one more thing guys. Let me know if you like this type of content. Now that we've covered Capcom, with the launch of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm thinking of doing something in the same vein, but instead focusing on Squaresoft /Enix/Square Enix, and while they may not be as open to the idea of remakes, there's always room for speculation. But I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. Do you agree with me? Is there anything not on this list that you'd like to see remade? Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Dot Matrix out.